I want people to understand this ordeal, it's taken a toll on both of us.
Casey Anthony's parents respond after 15 years of allegations.
I've gotten blamed for something I didn't do, and it tears me up inside.
This can change our life. This is serious.
This is their final response.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
The friendship is sharing deal. Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac, and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
For exclusive podcasts and more, sign up at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, an Alabama man on death row was convicted for killing a deputy based on testimony overheard on the phone. Today, even the prosecutor thinks it was a mistake. We'll review the new podcast, Earwitness. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband, love of my life, and recent Facebook, I don't know, what do we call you? Re-enterer? Kevin Flynn.
I don't know.
Kevin.
Parolee.
I know.
Yeah,
How you doing, Kevin? Welcome back.
Well, it's good to be back on Facebook.
I know.
To be the only person on earth that doesn't get to be on it.
I know. It's a very fancy problem that you were
Actually, I was on Facebook. I just couldn't interact with any of our podcast presence there. And then you finally got to see what the hell I've been doing all this time.
Right. But I think that I did a pretty good job. And
You did.
You got to sit there and suffer while I just took over the group and all sorts of stupid things.
Yeah. But by the way, I'm still looking over my shoulder at the Facebook cops. I'm like, I don't know.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Hey, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca. Thank God you know a defense investigator, Kevin, who could help you if you're wrongfully convicted.
That's right.
Yeah. I go to cyber court.
Yes. And finally...
And you could appear as a cat. It would be fine that time.
Oh, just like that guy.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to take a look.
Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
I'm not a cat.
But he could be.
I want to be sometimes.
And finally, our captain of all things cynical, author of the City trilogy of novels, host of Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcasts, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hello, Rebecca.
All right, so Kevin, before we get started with all the fun things we have planned, what is coming up on Thursday's show? This is obviously Monday's program.
Yeah, on Thursday, we're going to be talking about the new podcast from iHeart. It's called Unrestorable.
All right. I'm looking forward to that conversation. So, Kevin, just to remind people, what did you actually do? What did you do wrong?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes, you post something and it gets flagged because of copyright.
Yeah.
All right. And this is an algorithm that does this. Bang, it finds some code or whatever. Or
you have music in this video you shouldn't have used.
Yeah, something like that. Or you say something that, this happens most often, that breaks the terms of service.
Yeah.
And it might be kiss my ass, that comes, the tone doesn't come off right. And it comes, it's cyberbullying or it's violence or something like that. And this is the thing that threw me because I had preloaded a bunch of posts and I kept thinking it had something to do with the text, but it kept saying it was a cybersecurity violation. And I have no idea what that could possibly be. I had a URL insert, which was not a broken URL, but I have no idea how that could have been.
I have an idea.
And then no obvious answer to that.
Was the URL unpublished when you loaded those posts?
I don't think in this case. It might have been, but it never was a problem before.
I know, but they may have changed the A. B, was it a HTTPS or HTTP?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I think Violet might have dimed you for a couple of Bitcoins.
Yeah,
yes.
That's it. Violet's messy.
Violet. Oh, I
Fucking
cannot
messy
wait
Violet.
to talk
That's
about
it.
Violet. All
That's
right.
it. Yeah, if something happened, I'm back. I'll be more careful.
I will. Can I just say something once to our listeners too that I just want to throw out there? If you have a business page or even a personal page, there's also this thing happening where accounts disguised as Facebook try to scare you. Like there's an account, like a page or an account called the Facebook Business Center, and it looks super official. Yeah. And it's like you'll get a direct message from the Facebook Business Center says your page is due for deletion because of blank, blank, blank. And then you look at the account and you're like, this is a fake ass account that is not Facebook.
Yeah.
It's called like Business Violation Center or something. And they're just trying to scare you and spam you and get your data.
My data.
So anyway, keep an eye out for that scam, people. It's happening. It's real out there. You don't want to get caught in that trap. All right. Well, I am absolutely, chomping at the bit? Is that the word? Champing at the bit? What is the real word?
Chomping at the bit.
What's the real word, Laura? You're a horse person. Whatevering at the bit.
I would say it could be champing. It could be either. Chomping. I say chomping.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to do that about this
Apparently
podcast.
not, because you just keep adding other things.
Well, shush. So let's get to it, shall we?
How about we do that?
All right. I'm going to go ahead and drop that first clip right now. Leading off.
And it probably wasn't 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 45. I mean, I didn't count them. Boom! Small caliber gun. It wasn't a big caliber. And all of a sudden, a few seconds later, boom! About the second time I said it, boom, that was a gun.
In 1995, Deputy Sheriff William Hardy was shot while moonlighting at a Birmingham hotel. An informant told police the shooter was Toforest Johnson. Even though 10 people saw him at a nightclub at the time of the crime, detectives believed they had their man.
Yeah, I don't know anything. I'm just waiting. You know what I'm saying? But you do. You gonna make me say I did not do it. I was not there.
But after Yolanda Chambers' statements were discredited, prosecutors turned to Violet Ellison, who said she overheard Johnson confess on a 3-way phone call. But years later, even the prosecutor has doubts about the so-called Earwitness and whether Johnson should be on Alabama's death row.
No question in my mind, this guy was not guilty of this crime, and I couldn't comprehend how this could happen.
From the producers of Bone Valley comes Earwitness. Host Beth Shelburne picks apart the original investigation, police conduct, and the credibility of the key witness. What does it say when even the people who put an innocent man on death row can't get the justice system to right a wrong? Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about significant plot points from Earwitness. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Now, I just want to make a note because I got this question in my Reddit AMA that I'm currently doing on the Crime Writers on Reddit. Why do I sometimes say significant plot points?
I don't know. Why to you?
Because I want to signal that there are significant twists in this podcast. So, you know.
So when we say spoilers, like we really mean it's going to be spoiled.
We're going to be talking about those significant plot points. So if you really want to don't want to know about those, listen to the podcast first and then come back here. If you're the kind of person who doesn't mind being spoiled, then go ahead and listen to this. But I'm just giving you a fair warning. That's what that means.
Yeah, more than most podcasts, this really changes the experience, if you know.
Right. So when I say significant, that's a signal, people. That is a signal.
I just want to point out that you keep talking about how badly you want to talk about this, and we're 7 minutes into the episode.
Hush now.
And you're still, come on, let's go.
It's a tangent-centric podcast.
Let us do it.
All right, Kevin.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. Let's do it.
And that does it for us. From everyone at Partners in Crime Media. All right, so Kevin.
Yeah.
Lava for Good. This is Jason Flom's outlet. Of course, he's also a record executive, a music executive, and now he has this outlet where he's largely focusing on wrongful conviction, justice-forward podcasts. What do you think of this production company and the content they have been putting out?
Well, they've been busting out the best wrongful conviction stories, bar none. And not just like the rage-inducing kind, because a lot of these stories, the source material is very frustrating and can be, can elicit big emotions in people, but these are really well-told stories. So this is a great successor story to Bone Valley to show that these folks like to tell stories that are meaningful, but also in meaningful ways. And so we don't hear from Toforest once.
Nope.
And yet he's very present throughout the entire series. And sort of the TikTok is very compelling about how they got from here to there and brought the whole thing together.
So, Toby, this podcast, I should tell people, is very different from Bone Valley tonally. It doesn't have that sort of like lugubrious, slow unraveling of the story. It doesn't have sort of the intimacy of like the Gilbert King and Chelsea, like up close Mike journey thing. It's a much more efficient, very quick paced podcast, but it does have one essential thing in common with Bone Valley, right?
Yeah, well, like Bone Valley, it starts with the reporter getting a tip from an unlikely source. In this case, it's the former attorney general in Alabama who says this is a guy who's on death row who doesn't deserve to be there, and somebody needs to take up the case and look into it and get some movement behind getting this guy out of there. So, you know, Alabama, which is not known necessarily for its attorneys general being super liberal. So I think sort of you're starting off, you're like, okay, so there's definitely something going on here. Like this isn't just like a shot in the dark or whatever. There's clearly some substance to this, and then we find out.
Yeah, and it's funny, Toby, because the AG's name's Bill Baxley, former AG. He says,
I don't know how the guy got indicted, how they got, I didn't see how the jury convicted him. I would have never believed that could have happened in Alabama.
Really? You could not have seen how a black man could get convicted for killing a sheriff's deputy on the thinnest of evidence in Alabama. Really?
Or anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
But Alabama. He's like, but Alabama.
This is just the first of, I mean, there's not a ton of them, but there's a few just like head scratching moments where it's like
gobsmacking moments.
Have you like, are you aware of like any history or anything?
Or just
so anyway,
things that people say that you're like, do you know you just said that out loud kind of situations.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of good tape in that kind of way where people, you know, I wouldn't even say they're unguarded. I would just say they're sort of don't realize the effect that what they're saying has on other people or how sort of out of step their views are.
So one of the things, Laura, that struck me immediately when I listened to this podcast is that the reporting is thorough and pretty impeccable and efficient. I mean, my experience of listening to this podcast, like episode 1, I'm like, okay, what could they possibly do with the rest of these episodes of this podcast? Because the reporting just comes at you fast and furious, and there is a lot of it. What did you think of just sort of like the thoroughness, the detail, the receipts of this entire enterprise?
Oh, this was on a level sort of unparalleled with anything we've listened to in recent times. I think in terms of the amount of research that was done. I mean, she gets thousands and thousands of pages of documents that she discusses going through, reviews those, goes directly to various players in this, but analyzes the information and presents the information in just such a thorough way that, I mean, it's definitely, it's dense, but there's nothing wasted in that density, if that makes sense. There is just detail after detail, and she'll line things up in such a way that you have the complete picture, I feel like, of what was happening at that time. At the end of this podcast, when you've had that amount of detail and that amount of thorough investigation into a case like this, which is a huge injustice, you know, compared to, I can't even think of other cases that we've listened to where you're like, at the end, you're like, oh, this is absolutely heartbreaking because it's so clear that this man should not have been convicted. But I think the reporting brings us to that conclusion because it was so well done.
I have to say, and I was texting with my legal theory friend Colin Miller about this as I was looking at this podcast, this might be the worst story of a wrongful conviction case that I have ever heard in terms of, I mean, any wrongful conviction is equally awful. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of how this one unfolded and in terms of how it is not being corrected, it is among the worst, if not the worst one I have ever heard. And we're going to get into some of those twists and turns. But one of the things I want to talk to you about real quick, Laura, is one of the major process issues in Alabama, which is the defense resourcing of a death penalty case in Alabama. We learned that the defense attorneys in this death penalty case for public defenders, they're resourced at $20 an hour with a cap of $1,000 for a death penalty case. What were your thoughts when you heard that?
I was like, that's barely enough to cover them reading the discovery in this case. Literally. I can't even fathom that. I really, really can't. I mean, New Hampshire, I feel like right now is doing a really good job in this area. We had a huge backlog. So that was my sort of barometer for comparison, is like, well, here's how we're doing it in New Hampshire. Somebody gets a court-appointed case, say the public defender system can't take it. It goes to a pool of private attorneys who take court-appointed cases, who get funds from the court for not only their work, but for investigators and experts and analysis. If they only had $1,000, that's not even enough for a fucking Dewey case.
Yeah.
There's so many things in this case that are egregious when you look at where he is now and why he is still on death row. But if you don't even have an adequate defense going in, I guess I just can't see how that's not a bigger issue, that more people aren't like screaming from the rooftops that this is a horrible approach to adequately giving somebody the right to a fair trial.
And he was tried more than once.
It could be the only issue. It could be that in Alabama, you could be death penalty ineligible if you got a public defender. That could be the only issue, because like it's egregious. And I'll say, like, New Hampshire has a lot wrong with its criminal justice system, but we have one of the best public defender programs in the country. Like, you'll talk to young lawyers who come here for that program. It's because of the quality of the program. If this were the only issue in the case, I would still say this is a horrible injustice. But it is far from the only issue in this case. Step one, we have the investigators. We have Detective Tony Richardson, who, Kevin, you have to admit, Beth Shelburne gets a lot of access. He's very generous with his time in this podcast. He's very transparent with Beth in terms of his interviews that he gives her. And she brings a lot of receipts to these interviews. For instance, at one point when he talks about a witness knowing something that she shouldn't have known, she says, but that was in the newspaper. He says, no, it wasn't. And then she played a TV news clip from like the following day, and it was on TV. But he also, in an episode, I believe it's 2, says something like, the detective just knows the truth. And when someone's lying to you, you just have to go through those lies until you hear the things that you know are true.
Yeah, well, I mean, Richardson really does talk the talk. And, it's like, no, best practice, you should never, turn the tape off. And then you go back and hear him do that, turn the tape off.
When you go off the record with people, I mean, what is best practices for?
Best practice is not to go off the record. That's the best practice. I mean, once you cut the tape on, unless the tape runs out and you changing the tape, you don't cut it off until you're done. There's no way I can tell you why the tape stopped. But I will tell you this. It didn't stop so something sinister could happen.
And it's like he knows this, but I guess he forgot that he just did that all the fucking time in this investigation. He also has, right, the thing is like, oh, you just know, or, the great one when he's like, oh, it's not the 1800s. No one gets coerced into giving a confession. And it's like, come on, dude. I mean, he comes in also saying this. How's this for one, guys? You're a witness or a suspect. So basically saying, you either better tell me something and make yourself a witness, or I'm going to charge you with murder.
Right. Who does that sound like to you? Does it remind you of anybody?
Who does it remind you of?
A lot like Roland Lammy, in my opinion.
Right. And so for those folks that were there and like didn't have anything, they went to jail for hindering prosecution because they didn't know anything.
Right.
I was outraged at that. Talk about like forcing people to come up and say something. This is how you get Yolanda and you get Violet.
Talk
people
about
like them.
Violating their constitutional rights. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, but you're right. Robinson does, is generous with his time, just like we ask people to be generous with us on Patreon.
Oh, Kevin.
Yeah, what?
I was not expecting that. That was quite the transition.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Kevin. I guess we're in the business section.
Yes,
that was
course.
Abrupt.
No, it wasn't abrupt.
Go ahead.
Music was playing. You just weren't paying attention.
I wasn't. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, so right now on Patreon, we've got all sorts of great stuff. We're inviting new people all the time to come and join us at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia. If you join us at the leading off level, you'll get exclusive podcasts, including the Crime Writers on After Show. This after show We're going to be talking about stuff that came up in Rebecca's AMA on Reddit. There's a bunch of new listeners that are there, so they had questions for us. You'd also get a podcast called Married with Podcast, where Rebecca and I dole out relationship advice, parenting advice, things like that. One of our questions in the last episode dealt with someone whose kid whipped it out on the school bus.
Took it out.
He was only 7. He thought it was funny. He didn't know.
I'm sure it actually was.
It probably was funny, yeah.
It sounds hilarious.
It sounds. If you join us at the Bricker scaler level, you get to also get the exclusive podcast from Laura Bricker called Leave It to Bricker. Last time, Laura used goats I can't even believe I'm saying this as the selling point.
It's so appealing.
It's 100% Laura Bricker, and in the last episode, she used goats to get rid of all of her poison ivy, which was not successful 100%, Laura?
No, not successful 100% because they were not able to get to the roots because of this ground cover I had. So I'm back to the drawing board, but it was a very fun time having the goats out. And I don't know what might be next up. I mean, there's so many crazy things that happen in my life. You never know where I'm going to end up. Fire walking, goat yoga, dog poop patrol. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
These are all real possibilities. If you join us at the Let's Do What We Do level, you can get episodes of Crime Writers on early and ad-free. And if you come in as a deep diver, you get all that stuff, but you also get to watch and join the recording of Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. Toby's actually recording a new one this week, and the book is called The Man Who Invented Motion Pictures. Toby, who's joining you for your discussion?
So we have Deep Dive regular Deb Schutica, and then we also had this strange, even though I had overbooked, a whole bunch of people had things come up in their lives that made it so they couldn't participate. So instead of just folding up the chairs and moving on, I reached out to the Deep Dive Dive Bar Facebook group to see if anybody wanted to come on.
There's a Deep Dive Dive Bar Facebook group?
Yes.
Okay, you know how you didn't know we had music under the business section? I didn't know about that shit, Toby. Okay.
Well, it's very exclusive.
All right.
Yeah, we're not in it.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I reached out there and said, any volunteers who want to come on and discuss this book? Yeah, so we've got 3 longtime listeners who are going to be joining Deb and myself. Colby Ricks.
Toby, yeah.
Lauren Hawkins.
Yeah.
And Satoria Tomberlin.
Wow.
Oh, excellent folks.
So it's sort of a new chapter in the deep dive. I'm really looking forward to it.
And a new chapter for Crime Writers On, discovering a Facebook group we didn't even know we fucking had.
All kinds of surprises. If you want to know other stuff happening about us, we encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. Go to crimewriterson.com. You get a free newsletter every Thursday. It gives you stuff like Crime Writers On behind the scenes, merch.
Yep.
I think we're going to start making t-shirts that are for Laura and Toby to just say, uninvited.
Yes. Also, by the way, if you belong to our Patreon, sometimes we have live tapings.
Yeah, we'll do more of those.
Yes, and you can let us know what you like, and we'll do more of that too.
And also, you get to come into the Facebook group in the Bricker Scale, where I discuss how you can rage exercise and all those fun things. And I sometimes post some fun little exclusive things that are happening in my quaint town in there.
We've got all sorts of rogue Facebook groups. All right, Kevin, can we go ahead and end the business section
Yeah,
now?
why don't you fade the music out now?
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now.
Here's your grand weathercast. 60 degrees in the driver's seat. In the passenger seat, a high of 66. In the second and third rows, a balmy 70 degrees. Just the way Grandma likes it.
With 3-zone automatic climate control, life's grander in the first ever Grand Highlander. Toyota, let's go places.
I never did anything to harm my daughter or my granddaughter.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's Parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
The friendship is sharing deal. Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac, and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
All right, so Toby, there are several twists in this podcast, and it's enough that we have the story at first of Toforest being wrongfully convicted through this horrible investigation, and these cops who just completely went in the wrong direction because they knew, of course, that he had done it, even though there were alibi witnesses who said he did not. But I thought for the first couple episodes, this podcast was going to be about their, quote, star witness, and that is Yolanda, who they bring in, and because her mother says, you know, she said that she knew who did it. And of course, Yolanda ends up, we learn that she is this police girl who ends up becoming this sort of like serial witness for police. And she ends up being somebody who helps the police and the FBI with drug investigations and so forth. But she ends up testifying that she was coerced, yet her testimony ends up being allowed into his first trial. What do you think about Yolanda's story and the way that it unfolds in this podcast?
You know, one of the things I think that this podcast does really well is to sort of set up the environment of the justice system, and then also how a lot of the people who are interacting with it, you know, don't have the kind of information or control over what happens to them that you would want them to have, and you think in a functional system they would have. Yeah, Yolanda, who is, what is she, 15?
15.
But
she was street smart, Toby, so she read a lot older.
She's super street smart, so she's at least like 16 and a quarter.
Oh, my God. When he said that,
Yeah, it's insane
disgusting.
making.
Yeah.
And, she doesn't have a parent. She doesn't have a lawyer. She's so young. She doesn't have anybody sort of advising her or whatever. She gets pressured into making a statement, which is then used against Toforest, and then just gets essentially used, I believe, by law enforcement for the remainder of her short life, to the point at which I don't think they come right out and say it, but the strong implication you can get is because she was an informant on drug dealers, that's probably what got her killed.
Yeah.
So this incident was sort of the beginning of the end for her, and in a situation in which she really doesn't seem like she has any chance of negotiating the justice system in sort of the role that she's called into play.
And we should say Beth Shelburne tries to solve, or at least advance, the solving of that murder. She actually digs up, she interviews people, she tries to figure out who the suspects could be, and then she goes to the police multiple times. She ends up talking to a detective and saying, here is some stuff. Can you bring up the file? The guy says, I'm going to go to the storage unit and get the file. And he never, ever apparently does anything or gets back to her, because apparently they don't care. Right, Laura? I mean, I kind of thought this is where the podcast was going. It's like, okay, we're going to solve Yolanda's murder. That's where the podcast is going. And that wasn't even the final twist. But what did you think about that? I mean, she's doing her shoe leather here, and she potentially solved a murder here and nobody cared.
I mean, that's what's frustrating about this is we have the Toforest case, which is, you're like, okay, they got the wrong person. You get this case where you have a crime victim's family out trying to solve the case and actually getting information that isn't going anywhere. And then you have Violet Ellison. So there's three big rage-inducing topics, I guess, in this podcast. 3 rage buckets here. So like you said, you're like, oh, this is where this is going. Now we're going to hear about this murder of this witness and what happened. But no, now we're on to something else in this case, which is, I'm going to call her, she's like a professional witness.
She is. All right, well, let's get to her then. The subject of the title of the podcast, the Earwitness herself. So Kevin, we hear that Violet Ellison is the person who ends up being the star witness at Toforest's second trial.
Yep.
They get a mistrial in the first trial. They realize, oh, we forgot. We have this incredible witness we can now use. A woman who overheard.
It's fucking crazy.
On a party line, essentially, that he did it. We're going to bring her in because she's super credible. We hear jurors say in the podcast that she was credible, and that is why they convicted him. Now, we learn through a series of some of the most extraordinary tape I've heard in any podcast that Violet is not, in fact, as credible as she appears. What did you think when you heard the interview first? Which one should we start with? How about the granddaughter?
No, how about, first of all, before you get to the granddaughter, because you get that family last.
Okay.
You find out the other cases she was involved in, where she made accusations and went to the guy who apparently she made an accusation of improper.
Yes.
He worked at a school.
Because she wanted his job.
She wanted his job.
Yes.
And when he called her a messy woman.
Do you have an opinion about her or have any information that you could give us about her?
I know she's very vindictive. She's like to be involved in a lot of stuff that doesn't involve her. She's a very messy lady. Very messy.
If the credibility of a person is really, fair game, because that's a big key to the conviction and putting somebody on death row, it is fair, I think, to question their character. And when your grandkids say fuck you to grandma because you're stealing my social security number and doing all sorts of other stuff, I think that says a lot about a person.
That's a true, I hate to say it, I know that's my grandma, but that's a true scam artist there. Any way she can get $1, telling you, she ain't that type that's just gonna help somebody just to help them. It gotta have money. It gotta have money involved.
Wow.
That's just how it gotta have. If it ain't got money involved, she ain't with it.
But I also like that, they sort of give you a motivation. Like, was it just for $500 here or there? It just seems like that Violet's son was always in trouble with the cops, and this was a way to ensure that, that he stayed out of jail for any, extended period of time. But yeah, a really fascinating character here. It's the kind of thing where you don't usually hear a reporter kind of go there, and she doesn't like really call her out and slander her in any way, but definitely puts the spotlight right where it should be.
Well, she does say, this isn't something I would typically do.
Yeah.
However, all signs point to yes in this regard. I mean, I think it starts kind of in a suspect way where the prosecutor is like, I just happened to be walking by another courtroom and I saw Violet hugging the mother of somebody who was on trial for drug charges, and I thought that seemed suspicious, and I'm like, that's kind of fucking uncool. But then it's like an onion, like blooming. Toby, you had a great description that we were texting about this podcast when I was listening to, where you described this Violet plot twist in a very specific way to me.
Yeah, I guess it felt a little bit like Gone Girl to me, in that it goes from being one story to a completely different story. Like, you go from sort of going into the details of what happened on this night and what are alibis and the pressures different people came under to, there's this key piece of evidence. And then suddenly it's like, well, the person who gave that piece of evidence is a serial liar, and it's been documented and everybody knows it. And it's like, oh shit. So what this story really is about now is about this woman who is just leaving this trail of people in prison because she wants some money and she wants to keep her son out of trouble. I mean, that's why I think at the beginning, when you were like, you strongly urge people or whatever it was you said to skip ahead, this plot twist for something that's true crime and is based on fact or is fact. I mean, this is a pretty extreme twist, and I think is sort of what separates this podcast, which is excellent anyway, like this kind of thing where the story just kind of does this crazy turn. It just makes it something more, in my opinion.
Laura, what did you think about how they chased down Violet's original motivation in this case, which is kind of how this whole thing started with Violet, right? Where they were like, why did she testify? Why did she do this? And they figure out it was for this reward, and the state is all fucking cagey about it. But they did their due diligence. What did you think about that section of the podcast?
I loved that part because it was like, well, first of all, there's a defense investigator. I always like when there's a defense investigator out there trying to find confirmation of this $5,000. It took 17 years to confirm that she got this payment. But I like how nobody knows anything about it. Nobody knows anything about it. And then this one, I don't know if it was like a clerk or an admin in the office is like, oh, well, there's the secret file with the payout information.
Of course.
The secret file. I'm like, oh, we all have secret files.
Labeled
I love secret
file.
Secret file. I'm like, this is straight out of a detective novel. But what I loved is setting up what we were just talking about, what Toby was talking about, as we get the full picture of Violet and who she is, this is the initial little hint. So he goes there, the defense investigator, and he's like, oh, I'm here about the reward that you got. And she's like, oh, I don't know anything about that. And then he's like, and here's the paper. And she's like, oh. So she's clearly not credible and playing dumb and downplaying everything. But I think that was the perfect segue into getting just one thing after another about her and her credibility. And also the way that she did that jail call was totally bonkers, helping her daughter who helped her boyfriend make a 3-way call from the jail so he didn't have to use his quarters or something. So
it's bullshit. You're saying it's a bullshit story is what you're saying?
There's just so much fucking bullshit. But
and then she stayed on the phone.
Yeah.
She's nosy.
I mean, I love to listen to people on the phone because I'm nosy. But
and you heard someone say, "Hi, I'm Toforest Johnson, and I shot up a deputy." Okay, bye. Click.
Yeah, it's like it's incredible. Like this woman is a reflexive serial liar. I mean, for reasons, ostensibly, but she's also trying to steal her own granddaughter's social security number when she joins the military so that she can get her benefits or whatever. So, like, there's a lot going on there in this person's head, obviously. One final thing I want to talk about is the former prosecutor who's now decided that Toforest needs a new trial, but won't go so far as to say that he made any mistakes in the prosecution of this case, even though he had 2 trials 2 weeks apart where he had 2 completely different theories of the crime with 2 different defendants, and he was a fucking bullshit prosecutor at the time of the case. And he makes our reporter stand at the front of the church standing up for her interviews with him, which is bananas to me. I know that there's a lot of half-measure stuff and it's supposed to be extraordinary. I have a really, really hard time with this half-measure thing, and I know it's also extraordinary. Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're talking about Jeff Wallace here.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, Beth kind of puts it in perspective. It seems like a half measure, and her frustration is palpable. I mean, look, there are few prosecutors that would go so far as to contact a defendant's attorney years after a conviction just because they have a sudden misgiving about their key witness. Also, saying that Toforest deserves a new trial is not the same as saying he thinks he's innocent. But he certainly seems to be standing by some sort of code about the way the law works versus the way the actual world is, and what the legal truth is and what the truth is. So it seems like he's only willing to go so far. That makes it disappointing, and I think he does know better.
Well, he says the evidence was enough in the courtroom for him to prosecute the case, and I call total bullshit on that. He presented a different case in a different trial concurrently to that case.
He's saying the ingredients were all there. But it comes out a shit sandwich is what it is.
The ingredients were there. There was no physical evidence. There are no eyewitnesses. The first alleged eyewitness is so not credible, changes her story. I mean, how many alibi witnesses that saw Toforest on the other side of town? There's some girl that he called that he had just met that same night or met before, but was calling. I mean, there's so much other information out there. I can't even wrap my head around how this guy got convicted.
There are alibi witnesses that they refuse to call back.
Yeah.
Like Queasy. By the way, Queasy, I've never heard anyone describe a criminal defendant the way Queasy talks about Toforest, how fine he was. She's like, Yeah, it's like the pre-chorus to a Salt and Pepper song. It was just
I wanted to get with him. Also, I wanted to not have him not go to prison so I could get with him.
I knew him from hanging out in the neighborhood in Ansley, and oh my God, I had a crush on him. He was the finest, yeah.
What do you remember about what he looked like?
He was short, a nice body. Oh my God. Anyway.
One of the things that this podcast has in common with In the Dark Season 2 is that you get a look at how sort of the arbitrariness and the open corruption and just the, and this even goes to the $1,000 cap on the public defender and paying them $20 an hour and stuff. It's all a system of oppression, right? It's all to show that you're helpless in the face of the state. You can be doing nothing and you can still be executed. That was one of the big things I pulled away from In the Dark Season 2. And in this one too, is with the falling of the old sort of hierarchies after the civil rights movement. I mean, this is one way of maintaining social order, is to have people scared that you can live a perfectly upstanding. I mean, you don't even have to live a perfectly upstanding life. You just have to not kill somebody, but you could still
be murdered by the state.
Yeah, you could still get a capital thing. And even though there's really no evidence, if they have somebody who they can pay $1,000 to put you in the frame somehow, you're stuck. And if you get the wrong jury and your public defender is making $6 an hour more than the guy at Chick-fil-A, it's just textbook. And that's how you keep people scared.
Here's your grand weathercast. 60 degrees in the driver's seat. In the passenger seat, a high of 66. In the second and third rows, a balmy 70 degrees. Just the way Grandma likes it.
With 3-zone automatic climate control, life's grander in the first ever Grand Highlander. Toyota, let's go places.
I want people to understand this ordeal, it's taken a toll on both of us.
Casey Anthony's parents respond after 15 years of allegations.
I've gotten blamed for something I didn't do, and it tears me up inside.
This can change our life. This is serious.
This is their final response.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
The friendship is sharing deal. Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out the new podcast, Earwitness? The whole thing is available to listen to right now on your favorite podcast app. Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Earwitness?
Yeah, this is a big thumbs up. Not since Curtis Flowers have I been so outraged about a wrongful conviction. This was extremely well reported, extremely thorough. Really just took it to the next level. There's a lot of different twists and turns in this case. It's not straightforward. It's very interesting, but it's also very heartbreaking. And I really hope that something comes from this, even though it feels like the avenues have been exhausted in this case, that something comes from this new awareness being put on Toforest's case. So big thumbs up for me.
Toby Ball, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Earwitness?
Yeah, I'm a big thumbs up too. I mean, this podcast kind of does all the things that we like podcasts to do. The journalism's really good. It's taking a look at systems. It's got great voices of people who it interviews. And then 2/3 of the way through, things change very drastically in a way that's super compelling. So it was really good to begin with. The way the story kind of plays out kind of lifts it to the next level. The fact that the journalists were willing to kind of go with it and sort of at the time recognize it for what it was and sort of lean into the way the story shifted. I guess it's maybe not unique, but it's quite a bit different than most things that we've heard. So yeah, big thumbs up. It'll be in the top 10 at the end of the year.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, big thumbs up for me, too. This is a superior podcast. We haven't even talked about Beth Shelburne so much, the host. She has, I think, done the best narration and podcast reporting performance that I've heard. It couldn't be more solid. The writing, the way that part of it is executed, it's just so tight. We keep hitting these different story beats, and then it just moves on to the next one. Just before it gets stale, it gets every little thing right. The story itself about the crime, very compelling. It's a remarkable achievement, and especially when we don't really get much of Toforest Johnson in it because he's on death row. He can't talk. The way that they make him present in the whole story, though, is still remarkable. Big thumbs up.
Yeah, it's a huge thumbs up for me. This podcast for me is an instant classic. I think it's one of the best straight true crime podcasts I have heard, I want to say, in years. The pacing, the signposting, the writing, the reporting are impeccable. It has at least 3 very significant plot twists that make you think, oh, wow, it's a whole different podcast than I thought it was going to be. And Beth Shelburne, the reporter here, brings all of the receipts, all of the sourcing, everything you need to know, when you finish this podcast. For me, it's up there with In the Dark Season 2. It's up there with Suspect Season 1. I love this podcast so much. I am telling everybody that I know to run, don't walk, and listen to Earwitness. And if you have not listened to it yet, fair listener, download it right now onto your podcast. Prepare to go for a long-ass walk, do your laundry, drive somewhere, whatever you need to do. Listen to Earwitness immediately. It is fan-fucking-tastic. Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call
the crime of the week.
Whoa. Employees at the happiest place on earth say, no, it is not an urban legend. People really do poop in the ride lines at Disneyland and Walt Disney World. Some live tweeting park goers recently shared their sightings of parents letting their kids drop their pants and make a donation to the Rise of the Resistance attraction and just leave it there. Oh my God. But cast members, as they're known, say this happens all the time in the park, often multiple times in the same day. They call it Code H, which stands for horse crap. The code originally signaled custodians to sweep up behind the parade horses. Now it refers to any deuce left by any park goer. They say the worst is the long hallway leading up to the Avatar Flight of Passage ride. Oh, I know that one. Even though they have installed a bathroom halfway up. There's no particular theory as to what's going on. It's probably a combination of misjudging the wait in line, excited children, or pure stress poops thinking about Big Thunder Mountain. Surprisingly, there are very few problems with the People Mover.
That's the one you would think by the name, right?
No, but that's such an easygoing ride.
Yeah,
no.
but it move.
I get it.
Right.
So panel number 2 might be the number 1 problem for Disney. So how should they solve this problem? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
Boy, I mean, I still haven't solved the dog poop problem in Exeter, despite putting game cameras up around the town. So I don't think that's going to work. I mean, can't we get some sort of incentive? Like, you got to poop, use the poop bag. Like, here's a disposal station. You get to jump 2 spots in line. I don't know, something.
What do you think, Toby? How should Disney solve this problem?
Rebecca, I'm not as up on the Disneyverse as probably everybody else here is, but what I do know is that Donald Duck has 4 cousins, Huey, Dewey, Louie, and Pooey. And I think probably one of those could take care of it.
Which one?
What do you think, Kevin?
Time to open a brand new log ride.
What do you think, Kevin?
A brand new log ride.
Oh, that was your answer?
That was my, yeah.
My answer is say maybe don't take the song lyrics to let it go so damn literally.
Wow.
Maybe. You know what I'm saying, guys?
Yeah.
Know what I'm saying? All right, that's going to do it for us. Laura Bricker, if people want to reach out to you on social media, how can they find you online?
They can find me at Laura Bricker on Twitter.
Toby, what about you? If you want to be found online, how can you be found there?
At TobyBallNH on X.
Kevin Flynn, what's your handle and where are you?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
If you want to follow me everywhere, my favorite platforms are Twitter or Instagram. You can find me at Reb Lavoie. Follow the show everywhere at Crime Writers On, and please join our incredible community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. By the way, I'm also trying my damnedest to revive our dead Reddit sub at Crime Writers On, Reddit. Reddit.com/r/Crime Writers On.
Just turn on you one day.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's okay. That's what Reddit's for. Anyway, feel free to join me there. I'm doing a perpetual AMA. We also have a regular Facebook page. Just go there. There's a post there. You can join the group. Our group is rad. Get episodes early and ad-free and all the content we make at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. We've got a bunch of shows back there. How many, Kevin? Like 500, something like that?
I'm almost 450 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our editor is the wonderful Livy Burdett. The executive producer of this program is Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in the Treehouse Yoga Studio above the Mockingbird Cafe in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where we also control the equipment using broomsticks and duct tape. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later. Toby, your camera lens, you look like Barbara Walters in your camera lens.
I've got it on the Barbara Walters thing. I consider myself sort of a combination of Barbara Walters and Barbara Streisand.
Well, yeah. That's how everybody
Hard-hitting
thinks of you.
journalist and versatile entertainer.
That's right. That's how everybody thinks of you, Toby.
I felt that was the case.
In Crime Media. The friendship is sharing deal. Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac, and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.